hello, how are you? I'm an insane chook, and we're back again with another work in progress hit list. We're gonna spin this wheel, hope that doesn't land on something too difficult, and eventually finish all the things I have, well, almost all the things I have that I basically gave up on or lost interest in halfway through. Or some of them show that I doodled a bit, had the idea, gave up. Okay, so let's spin the wheel. What am we getting? What are we getting? Oh no. Well, I knew this was going to be hard because a lot of these things I gave up on from the very start. But this, I removed the... I actually did this twice. I removed the last attempt at recording because the idea was going to be way too hard, take way too long. I think this might just take just as long. Well, let's get started now, shall we? Time to start suffering again. You can see why I gave up. You can see very well why I gave up. I had half of an idea, and then I gave up. Which is how it always happens. Yeah, I guess first things first is I'm gonna just... Whee! And it's gonna be I want it to have a much more taller posing feel to it. I also want it to be like our current setup is very unfortunate. Because I can't see my keyboard. But I also want to be able to like be very close to my monitor so that I can get it into the nitty-gritty. So which brush should I use to do this? I think I'll use that. It has the nice little texturing. Let's see. No, I want to be not full on black. Yeah, something like that. So the theme for these types of monsters is that they have to represent something. Well, they have to represent the process of death, sort of thing. So, believe it or not, this is actually supposed to be the second last thing in the series. I also never finished 3, 2, or 1. So you can see my procrastination. I had to double check if I was still recording. We're gonna be doing this with multiple different... I like doing these with like all these traditional sort of materials. Well, not materials. Brushes. Because I can go very messy but also very creative with the ideas of it. Which, because like, especially when it's like a concept sort of thing, like when you're at a conceptual stage, it's pretty great. Because it's a whole deal of, I'm still thinking, I'm not sure what's happening, and that sort of thing. So I think the main thing, or the themes of this particular one, is more like late stage of decomposition of death for this particular monster. I think I'm gonna use because they can be like these sort of monsters can be animals or human. Like, I think I'm gonna use the human one because it'll be easier for me to just figure things out. Also because I know what humans look like. I'm disappointed in myself too. Don't worry. I mean, the other versions are much more fun. I think the weakest of them all is called the Parasite, and it is more fungus, like fungus as well as like maggots as well as ticks and stuff. So you get that whole feeling that them really being parasitic or something like that, but also being like on the verge of life. I think the reason why these ones are like this one is a more boring one compared to like the others might be the fact that it's just bones covered in smoke. Not very amusing or entertaining to draw. Although I just gave up and tried to figure things out. I don't know, me. I think maybe to keep it more with some of the themes, I should give it maybe some fungus. I also want it to look like they're constantly crying. I want them to have a much more heavier emphasis on gravity. So Fumble and Fall will still be a thing. It'll be separate from this series because this is more talking about the work and everything is more on topic, as well as all the work here is just things I never finished drawing, and Fumble will most likely be new drawings while talking randomly. Hmm. I wanted to have much more imposingness. I'm gonna... Okay, I'm getting a very rough idea of what I want this thing to be. One of the things would be that it has to have a very imposing height. Ooh, I didn't like how big that brush was. So I wanted to do I want them to be a disconjoined mess, but also intimidating as. So, bottom part would be like a heavy miasma. But occasionally wafts up. Yeah, something like this. Now that we, I think I might just keep it to like the brush, my current pencil brush sort of thing. But as for like all of these other parts, we're gonna be using the smudge tool. I'm gonna also shrink it just a bit. Actually, we're gonna go a bit more heavier. So it might be better if we just merge it. Let's just merge the whole thing. It'd be easier. It'll be freeing and just like not caring about the layers. It'll be like doing real life art without much thought. Okay. Let's see, we want more smoke up here. The most amusing thing is when you just give up and let your brain just do whatever it wants. Like, what's the point of thinking too hard? And then just let the brain do what it wants. I probably should have kept the sketch. But at this point, I'm also just like, hoping I can finish this. And also we can use like this. Yeah. Hey, let's make it like lighter. Yeah. There we go. Now it has like a very dark and ominous feel to it. To remind you that it is a monster. With a very heavy setting power. I feel like I shouldn't have had some of the information. It's supposed to be based off of, like, each of these monsters are based off of the, I feel like people have further developed the thoughts of this, but this were like for a while the thoughts of like the 5 stages of grief. Right now we only have 4 because the last stage is called acceptance. And these monsters are from a being that hasn't accepted death yet, or the loss of somebody they love. So what they represent is the stages that being is still suffering from. So there is no acceptance. Because they haven't accepted it. Yeah, I want more downward strokes for this. Don't worry, I will remember how to do this. So what this one is, it's not denial. In fact, it's depression, where the will to live just seems to fade from the body. It is the strongest one of the monsters, because the being that created them is still stuck in this phase. And hasn't left it. So they're still stuck. They've actually fallen asleep. I think these original pages were supposed to have like lots of information about each of the monsters, but I just want to draw it and then I'll figure it out. I'm gonna put on the glove again. My hands sometimes squeak against the surface. Now I'm gonna do like this. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the world the story is in from the perspective of an all-knowing creator, and not as readers who would follow the main characters on their adventure. So, there are these things called the concepts. They are beings so powerful and universal in importance that they have manifested thought and form. These concepts are creation, destruction, and the last one is harder to name. It can simply be called order or fate, but the concept is more like patterns, like the twos that follow the ones, or the repetition of repeating numbers in Fibonacci, or how there are consequences of action, and even how history repeats itself. These are the original three, and the order of concepts' existence is important to explain what happens. Something happened and destruction fell into an endless sleep, only to be found unresponsive by creation. Unable to wake destruction, they cried and begged for them to open their eyes. Eventually, their tears became an ocean surrounding them, and when there were no tears left for them to shed, mist poured from their eyes, surrounding them in a blanket of white. Soon, creation was unable to handle their grief, and they fell into a catatonic state. They were broken and unable to bear existing in a world forever without destruction, and thus joined destruction in an endless sleep. It is important to remember that they are asleep, not alive. They are so depressed they are sleeping and have chosen to not wake up. Because the three concepts are creation, destruction, and order. And remember how I said the order of the concept's existence is important? Yeah. After the two fell into an endless sleep, order gathered the fragmented energies from creation and destruction to create life and death. Having been created after their slumber, death cannot touch or claim creation or destruction, for the events were long before their concept had power. But life and death now exist as the gardeners maintaining what creation and destruction have left behind, and are now waiting for their hopeful but impossible return. Let's see, we gotta give the ribcage, or at least the illusion of that. Now we return back to the sleeping beings. Although creation is catatonic, their energy still seeps into the world, and their grief begins to take the form of four strange figures. These beings are called the Origins, a physical manifestation of the concept of creation's grief. There are 4 origins: denial, bargaining, rage, and depression. Each is a stage of grief, with the final stage, acceptance, never having formed because creation couldn't accept destruction's sleeping silence. The origins having been created unconsciously by creation, sharing the same singular longing to protect both their creator and the treasure of their creator. As such, they began their mission to silently protect the two and poured all their power into creating a new dimension to hide both of their sleeping forms, and as the last of their power was poured into this act, their forms melted into this new dimension. Although their minds and bodies merged with the dimension and their individualities disappeared into the very dimension they created, their energies would forever remain. With no physical form for the energies to return to, they would always attempt to reform into faint whispers of what they came from. These whispers of what the origins once were named ghosts, and now they wander aimlessly in this dimension of ghostly whispers. Thus, this dimension was named the Ghost Dimension. Although the drawing and current design here is very human, the ghosts in the Ghost Dimension can appear as any species. The ghost we have here is called a wraith. In terms of the order of the spirits, they are the most far gone, with the least signs of life in their designs. The wraiths in the Ghost Dimension are quiet and solemn. They would mainly stand in place and silently weep in their spot, or drift slowly and quietly in thoughtless directions. Their movement and patterns are thoughtless and purposeless. The main feature of the wraiths is a skeletal form shrouded in black mist with burning white eyes and tears like molten light. These are the marks of a wraith in the Ghost Dimension, always weeping and forever lost. When grief consumes them completely. This is the Wraith. And this is surprisingly a very short video. And with that, we can remove the Wraith from our list. Now, I'm gonna be honest, the other one that I removed was a bit too hard because it would have involved drawing 12 pictures and I was not okay with it. So that one being like, removed from the list. So you're not going to find that one. But I will add 3 more ones to the list. So we'll be sadly back at 22. And those two drawings will be of those 3 drawings will be of the parasite, the ghoul, and I still have to figure out a proper name for the last one because currently I only call it the demon, but it's not really. Because it doesn't really suit with the whole thought of like them being ghostly things or things related to death. I would also like to figure out a proper name for the parasite. Maybe it's a poltergeist? I mean, that makes more sense actually. I'll call it the poltergeist. And yeah, that'll be it. Thanks for watching!